forth. Go back to the placeholder. Okay, it's live now.
Oh, we're going right now. Hi.
So we'll go.
Sometimes it doesn't pick up the first few seconds.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
So we're live streaming now. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
So no t-shirt today. She forced me to wear a
I
collared
forced
shirt.
him to wear a collared
She's always
shirt so
doing
he
that.
can look nice.
He wore a t-shirt and he looks wonderful.
The guests can do whatever they want.
I just bought a whole bunch of new t-shirts recently, and she's like, no.
We actually put it out to Facebook and asked people, hey, should he wear a t-shirt or a collared shirt? And one mom said, wear it under a collared shirt. Every man has his secrets.
Because I was wearing the Superman shirt.
Yeah, it was cute.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we're here for the About Sex podcast. Today we have with us David Wraith. He's co-founder of Sex Positive St. Louis.
We're not starting the podcast recording.
No, I know.
Yet.
I'm doing the live stream for the people watching that way, dear. We can do
Okay.
it again. It's okay.
I was like, hold on, I can get it going if you're doing that.
No, you're going to do the intro, but live stream. You got to talk to people, or they're like, well, there's just people sitting there.
Hi, people. Hello, interwebs.
Yeah, it's a new world.
It is. Okay, so the stream's going. I'm going to move that over there. I'm going to get it out of my way. And we'll just go ahead and start the podcast.
Okay, cool.
I need a drink of water.
You'll do that first.
Yeah.
You have everything you need?
He's set.
You good?
I'm good?
Yeah, you're good.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, sorry to put you in the middle, but I had to.
It's because I move my head back and forth.
If I don't, she does this the whole time
I won't talk
while
into
she's
the mic.
talking, and the mic doesn't
I'm
pick
bad at
anything up.
talking into a mic. I like to talk to people.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay, let me get one thing ready. Sorry. Boop, boop, boop.
While he's getting his one thing going. So when did you guys found Sex Positive St. Louis?
2010.
2000. Oh, so it's been around for quite some time.
Yeah, we're coming up on 7 years this fall.
That's really cool.
Yeah, we definitely want to talk about that.
Of course.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start it.
Okay.
Notes.
Must be prepared. And there's a pen in front of you in case you need to write something, babe.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Go for it.
Sounds good. Welcome to the About Sex podcast. I'm Joshua Skirtu, and with me, as always, is our resident sex therapist, Angela Skirtu.
Hi.
And hi. And with us today is David Wraith. He is a self-described street-walking cheetah with a heart full of napalm. He's the do-you guru and the hardest working man in hoe business. He's co-founder of Sex Positive St. Louis and the HNIC at Planet Wraith. Good to see you.
Hello. Real quick, I don't think I'm currently the hardest working man in hoe business.
Oh yeah?
Is that an official certification?
I had to kind of, it's self-appointed.
It's a self-appointed title.
I had to kind of take a bit of a sabbatical. Shout out to my man Kevin Patterson in Philadelphia from Poly Role Models.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think he's the current title holder. He's
the
holding me
holder.
down from Philly.
Yeah. He got your back.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does that mean? The hardest working man in hoe business?
Well, I mean, hardest working man in hoe business kind of started as a joke.
Yeah.
And then because I've been claiming that since before I actually did any sex work. And then it became kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are what you call
it
yourself,
worked out.
I guess.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you do
Kurt
sex
Vonnegut
work.
said you are what you pretend to be.
Yeah.
Eventually you become that, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, and you also say you have a heart full of napalm. Does that mean you get heartburn? Because I get terrible acid reflux. I'm just curious about that. What does that mean to you?
That's a quote from Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I kind of want to be the Iggy Pop of whatever I do.
Yeah.
So again, like street walking, again, pre-sex work, title I gave myself. But yeah, street walking cheetah with a heart full of napalm. It's just kind of, I want to bring that level of intensity to what I do.
I see, like passion. You're
You have a
really
passion
passionate about
for
your
it.
work.
Yeah.
And it's a good pattern interrupt. It's on my business card.
It is.
So, you know, when you hand someone a business card that says you're a street walking cheetah with a heart full of napalm, they're kind of like, oh.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's definitely an
Yeah.
eye catcher there.
It definitely caught my attention. What does the do you guru mean?
Do you guru? Okay, so I struggle with the concept of enlightened self-interest. There are now. When I first sort of got into like sex positivity and the movement, I didn't have a lot of male role models. All my role models were women.
Yeah.
And
I think you're not alone with that. A lot of men feel like they don't have a lot of good male role models.
well, I mean, and we're out there now. Like now, I see, you know, people like Kevin Patterson, Reed Mahalko. But when I first got interested in this topic, you know, my role models were people like Susie Bright, Carol Queen, Betty Dodson, Annie Sprinkle, you know, later Tristan Termino, and a lot of the men that I saw, the few men that I saw doing the type of work that I was doing, I felt like a lot of them were doing it for the wrong reasons. Like they weren't coming from a genuine
What were the
place.
wrong reasons?
Well, yeah. What's the difference between a right or a wrong reason?
Well,
you think?
I feel like if
Are you
you're
talking about sex work?
not
or more of
not
the
sex work, but more like sex positivity, sex
right,
education.
Sex education.
Yeah.
Got
They were doing it to get laid,
Yeah.
and they were doing it to.
So it's like that one guy on campus with the guitar.
yeah,
Yeah. You know, he only learns 4 chords
Yeah.
and then he plays a little bit so he can
and
get
it's
laid.
and it's
That's
'cause- and it's because chicks dig it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they were doing it to get laid, and they were doing it to sort of aggrandize themselves. You know, some of them were, you know, in it for the money. Some of them were in it to meet women.
Yeah.
And
Or just to be popular.
yeah,
Yeah.
and to, you know, to be famous. And
Right.
for me, I'm tempted by all those things. Like I'm
Sure.
not made out of
Yeah,
wood.
you're
like
human.
I like money. I
You're
like
happy to be like
women.
amazing.
Yeah, I like
I like both of
adoration.
those things too. Yeah.
But I also want to put the community first. And so, but I struggle with, am I doing this for the right reason? And so by the do you guru, it's like I am genuinely interested in people's sexual health,
Right.
sexual, mental, and emotional health.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I will have sex with you, like
High five right there.
the top.
I love that your
You know.
eye contact right there with me when you said that.
So
Sexy. That'll be fun too.
So that's
but it's a bonus on the side.
yeah,
It's not the point.
it's secondary.
It's secondary.
It's a
everybody
positive-
likes sex.
It's a
Everybody likes
positive
sex,
side
Everybody
effect.
likes money. Everybody
Yeah.
likes to be popular.
That's the
That
thing about
understands.
being sex positive is everybody has sex. Everybody in general, even teenagers. A lot of people don't like to admit that, but
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm the same way. You know, I'm a sex therapist. Obviously, I want to make money, but even why we do this is that purpose. This is a free education source that we get to put out every week, and so I totally get that. Like sure, I want to make your money. Please pay me.
yeah.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah.
I also just want to help people learn about sex.
Yeah,
that makes
exactly.
total sense.
Oh, I get nothing out of this.
He
at
gets
all.
nothing out of it other
At
than
all.
joking and meeting cool
I just
people.
like to have fun and meet new people. Yeah, and sex education. That's it. Yeah,
That's cool.
that's interesting. So why don't you tell me a little bit about Sex Positive St. Louis? Like, how was it founded? What are its goals?
Yeah.
Like,
So I like to say we have an official mission statement that I have not memorized in 7 years. So by all means, go to, you know, sexstl.com, click on about. You can read the official mission statement. I like to say that our goal is to empower people to be their authentic sexual selves. We are an adult sex education and social group, and we started in 2010. We were founded by a woman named Anna Bent, and she recruited Kendra Holliday. Kendra recruited me. I believe Anna also recruited Jared Rourke, who at the time was going by Johnny Murdoch. He's the publisher of A Queer Press. And so, you know, Anna was sort of the intellectual. She's the academic of the group.
yeah.
Jared, he was, you know, very into queer publishing, queer arts, publishing zines and books and other queer writers.
Yeah.
Kendra had The Beautiful Kind, her platform. I
Yeah,
eventually,
we've had Kendra on the show. She actually referred you to us.
she's how I heard about the show.
Yeah, she was awesome.
And then I was, you know, doing, excuse me, I was doing like political stuff and spoken word, and then I eventually started Planet Wraith. So we all kind of had our own, it was 4 people with, you know, different strengths and different backgrounds. and different audiences.
Right. Well, what brought you together? What was the main? It was about making sex something.
Well, all of us were
Education.
involved in sex education in different ways.
Yeah.
Or in sex positivity in different ways.
Right.
And between the four of us, we were black and white, straight, gay, bisexual, monogamous, polyamorous. So we covered, just between the four people, we covered a lot of demographics, and we also had, you know, 4 different audiences and 4 different skill sets.
That's interesting.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
That's cool.
And then it grew from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it grew. I mean, it's, you know, it started with the 4 of us, and we had this sort of sex positive summit where we invited different leaders in the community to all get together. So, you know, maybe like 15 people.
Yeah.
And then we had our first event, and I think we had like 100 people or something crazy. Like, we packed this coffee house.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So it just kind of exploded, and we grew really steadily for like maybe a year or 2. I forget how long. And then we started a meetup.com page. And once we were on Meetup, we it really exploded.
Yeah.
Like, it really got really huge. I think we're like the 5th, if you look up polyamory groups on meetup.com, I think we're like the 5th or 6th largest in the country.
You're on the front page.
Wow.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, cool. You mentioned something about Planet Rape?
No, Wraith.
Oh, Rape.
No, that's an entire different website.
Oh, okay. No, I was wondering if it
Different
was like
planet.
a rape advocacy.
No, no,
but,
no,
oh, okay.
no.
I didn't know it was Planet Rape.
Planet Wraith. I'm
I totally
so sorry.
screwed that one up. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we didn't expect that
So
at
what's
all.
Planet Rape?
Wraith with the TH.
Yeah.
So Planet Wraith is kind of my personal brand.
Yeah.
It's an apologies to my good friend, sex educator Midori, because she has Planet Midori. And I think it was like subconscious. Like, I didn't realize I was ripping off her branding until like way after I had established it.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure she doesn't mind.
I've apologized to her personally. She's good with it.
She's okay.
She'll
allow it.
I'm very kind of self-centered and
So you're human.
selfish. And so kind of the idea of calling my brand Planet Wraith is like, I need my own planet. 'Cause it's all about me. Like,
It's your
everything's
space.
filtered through my experience.
Yeah.
So it's my website, my blog, it's some of my social media platforms. When I try to separate myself on social media between, you know, David Wraith, where I do a lot of personal stuff and keep in contact with my friends, and my sort of public persona, where it's like, you know, anyone can join, anyone can follow it. And, you know, one of the things that happened.
Are you able to do that? You keep them separate?
I mean, it's
she does not.
It's not about keeping it separate for privacy reasons. It's just about keeping it separate for reasons of organization. What happened to me, when Black Lives Matter kind of started in 2014 in St. Louis, I spent a lot of time talking about like race and politics and social issues like that. And I kept saying, God, I wish I could just go back to just talking about sex all the time.
Yeah.
And that never happened.
Nope.
So it's like,
Never does.
okay.
Yeah, once you open the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You get passionate about different things at different times.
yeah, so it's like, if people want to follow me and just to know about like polyamory or body image or nudism or BDSM, they can follow Planet Wraith.
Right.
And then if they want to follow like me in totality and hear all of my opinions that they'll either agree with or be very offended by and pissed off by, they can follow David Wraith. It's
Either way, they'll have passion.
So either way, it really is for both, but it's
Yeah.
where you say certain things and
Yeah.
where you don't say other things.
It's kind of, you know, choose your own adventure.
I have some questions about body image because I know you said you
Yeah,
do
you do
some work
coaching
with that.
for body
So,
image?
like, what work do you do with body image?
You work with men, women, both?
I work with anybody.
Anybody,
In you know, private. Well, I do coaching, so people can come to me about a variety of topics. I kind of specialize in body image, polyamorous relationships, BDSM, and then I do my workshop Bear As You Dare, which I take around the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
And
Was
that's
it Bear As You Dare?
Bear As You Dare.
Bear
As You Dare. So,
And that is a clothing optional body image workshop. I teach it completely nude.
Wow.
Whenever like legally allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you wrote on here that you did a workshop at Dartmouth completely naked.
Yeah, Dartmouth College. That was awesome. It was a lot of emailing
Yeah.
back and forth, and it was a
Is
lot
nudity
of.
okay?
Are you guys sure about this?
Like
That's
I
funny.
thought it was you're supposed to imagine the audience nude so that you're not nervous on stage. But I like your idea. Just be fully nude and then you'll be set.
Sometimes I don't have to imagine.
You don't have to imagine. You got it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had been doing Bears You Dare mostly at BDSM conferences.
Right.
And so it's a wide range of ages. It's people that have been in the BDSM scene a lot of times for several years. And so I was kind of used to that. And when I got invited to teach it at Dartmouth for IVQ, which is the annual conference of Ivy League gay and lesbian student unions, I was thinking to myself, okay, number one, are they going to let me do this?
Yeah.
At an Ivy League, university.
Apparently they did.
And again, lots of emailing, because I was like, you guys, I need to know, because I'm about to, get on a plane.
Yeah. You need to make sure you're not doing
I don't want to
anything
go to
illegal.
jail. This is
Yeah.
a very dangerous thing.
So
Yeah.
once
No children.
once I got permission from the college to do it, my concern was, okay, I'm used to doing this for sort of hardcore BDSM audiences
Right.
with, again, wide variety of ages. Am I going to be, the 40-year-old man standing naked in front of a bunch of privileged 18 to 22-year-olds who are fully
yeah, of
clothed,
course.
Right.
just staring at me like I'm not right.
Right.
And these college kids could not wait to take off their clothes in
Oh,
front
that's
of each
awesome.
other.
Oh
Like,
my God.
I had the highest level of adoption of the clothing optional rules at Dartmouth.
wow.
Like, I was
Wow.
basically staring at 70 naked college students. And one of the things
Should have
I do-
invited me. That sounds
I would
fun.
have liked to see that. I'm like, naked college
Well,
kids.
I was inviting
Why
like
not?
the IT guy and the staff. Like, you guys
Yeah,
can
you
stay.
come on in. Yeah.
And one of
funny.
my inspirations as a public speaker and an educator is Vanessa Van Edwards from Science of People. She's the author of the book Captivate. And one of the things she does is she will throw chocolate at people in her audience when they ask questions or make comments.
Just right in their face.
It's like their participation
Oh,
grade.
okay. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's
and
cute.
I do that in all my workshops. And one of the ways you participate in Bears You Dare is to take your clothes off.
Yeah.
So I've started like throwing chocolate at people when they take their clothes off. And when I did it at Dartmouth, it's like, okay, I am now officially the old man who gives young people chocolate
Candy to take their clothes off.
in exchange to take their clothes off.
Just
in front
don't bring
of
a
me.
van and a
That's not
puppy, and I think you're okay.
Don't bring
awkward
Don't
or
bring a windowless
inappropriate.
van.
Yeah.
It's fine. They did it up. It was consensual. It's
It was
consensual.
consensual. Everybody was
Yeah.
over 18.
Right.
Yeah,
Unless,
exactly.
Unless there was like, a Doogie Howser in the crowd or something.
Right,
Some, like
yeah.
Child Genius.
I am curious, along with this body image stuff, have you ever struggled with body image yourself?
I am struggling with body image right now.
Wow.
Oh, tell us all about it.
today.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, everybody I
Interesting.
think struggles a little bit, but this was, I'm curious about your journey.
So like this coming Monday, I'm not expecting this podcast to air, so I'm not trying to like plug, but this coming Monday we have a happy hour at Social House. And Social House is where the waitresses are topless or top free as
Top free.
I think in the
Top freedom.
I think in the commercial realm it's still topless. I think if you're
Topless,
doing
yeah.
it for yourself it's top free, but if you're doing it as your job it's topless.
Yeah.
So the waitresses are topless and they're body painted. And so we thought,
Oh, that's cool.
it would be cool if
Monday.
we, as the leadership of Sex Positive St. Louis, hosted the event topless with body paint.
Yeah.
And here I am, the guy that goes around the United States and Canada teaching people about body image. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror like, okay, do I want to be topless and body painted at, an event in a public place with 100 people? So, yeah, I struggle with body image to this day. And
Yeah.
I think that in a way, sometimes I feel hypocritical, but I think in a way it's good that this is something that I struggle with myself because again, I call myself the Do You Guru, but really I'm more of like the Do You Sherpa. Like I try to not position myself
In the mountains.
as the guru, like from the mountaintop, dispensing wisdom on my disciples.
Right.
And it's more like I'm still on this journey myself,
Yeah.
but I'm probably a little further than you, and I can sort of show you how I got to this point.
Right.
Yeah, I think people can really learn from each other's struggles. That's why we really like having people come on because, I think everybody deals with body image issues. I think people struggle in their relationships. And so we're all in a work in progress, really.
Oh, yeah.
And
And then we die.
then we die. And then it's like, what
Well,
do we
how
do
much
now?
progress did we get?
It's also a really good excuse not to go to the gym. Like,
Yeah.
well, if I have like 6-pack abs, how is that going to affect my career as a body image advocate? So,
Oh, it's better to eat the pizza then.
yeah, I'm not going to the gym for work.
Yeah.
I'm like the opposite of like Chris Hemsworth or something.
Yeah, you're going there to be healthy. That's it. Yeah. Okay. Let me ask.
Yeah, you've got some questions too, I hear.
What do you see sex positivity in general? What does that mean to you?
Okay, so the way that I discovered the sex positive movement and sex positivity is that growing up, I felt like in society there's this correlation between sexuality and criminality. Like, you know,
yeah.
beyond a certain level, beyond a certain sort of mainstream acceptable interest in sex, you might as well be, you know, a criminal.
Yeah, or
You know,
like offender or something.
Yeah, like even before like, you know, actual sex work and doing things that are illegal, you know, it's okay to be into monogamy and the missionary position, and you know, you can
Vanilla stuff.
you can be into porn a little bit, but if you're into some really weird, if you're into BDSM or
Kinky,
exhibitionism,
yeah.
you're a pervert, you're a degenerate, you'll harm children, you're basically a criminal.
And it's worse for men than women, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I think that argument can go. I think
I
know what
actually
you're saying.
have
I
an
know what you're saying.
example.
Yeah, we were
what
talking
proves
about
this is if a girl gets handsy with me and I don't
And he
want her
doesn't
to, I'm like,
consent, by
hey,
the way?
back off, and they're grabbing on me. Most of the time, that's the end of it. A guy does that to somebody in public, to a woman
female.
in public, that's going to be a problem. Like, people will be like kicking them out of the place. Like,
Which
there's
I
a
think
little bit of a
both
double
is still,
standard.
like,
And people
coercion
always
and
get handsy
crossing
with me. It
boundaries.
does happen. I don't know why.
But I think there's a reason for that. I think that when a woman, and I'm not condoning this because I don't give the hot girl discount. Like, I don't care how attractive a woman is. I don't care how sexy she is. Women who violate my consent, they reap the whirlwind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I still think that's offending. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. If somebody doesn't consent.
I think that there's a difference between like punching up and punching down. Like, we are more acceptable of women taking liberties with men because men have the power.
Yeah.
Whereas, and we have a whole system of power behind us that helps us oppress women.
Right.
That women don't have. Like, when a woman, you know, violates my consent or is inappropriate with me, it's annoying to me and it's offensive to me, but it's not scary or dangerous in the same way that it is when a man does it.
Because a woman might think, am I going to get raped? Am I safe? I'm
Exactly.
scared.
Well, I actually had a friend who was raped by a woman, so it does happen the other way.
does
I mean,
happen.
it happens, but like, let's keep it funky.
Yeah.
Like, numbers.
Yeah, numbers.
know.
Yes, I agree.
You know, there are always
I agree.
outliers.
I
but-
know.
Yeah,
I know
that's
there are
true.
outliers.
There's always outliers.
Well-
We're talking about the bell curve.
Well, like I was having a conversation with Hugo Schweizer, and you know,
Who's he?
He's a college professor on the West Coast. I think he's sort of most famous in the mainstream for co-authoring a book with Carrie Otis, the model and actress. And he's, you know, Hugo, I love you, but you're problematic, and you know that. And so I'm sort of hesitant to associate myself with him too much because I don't want like the feminist to come for me because I mentioned his name.
Okay.
But I was having a conversation with him. This is a few years ago. I think this is when I was working on Slut Walk. And
you do a lot of interesting
I
sounding
do some
work.
things. I put my thing
We'll
down.
have to come back around to
We're gonna
Slut
have to come
Walk.
back to
Keep
Slut
going.
Walk. Write a
I
note.
put my thing down.
Yeah. Pull it out.
And we were talking about how, like, I got death threats when I was organizing Slut Walk. And Hugo and I were talking about the fact that he and I get death threats.
Yeah.
But
She's had one. Go on.
But we never get rape threats.
Yeah.
And I think that for a woman getting a rape threat, I think is scarier than getting a death threat because murder is unfortunately
finite.
common, but also somewhat rare compared to sexual assault. I think sexual assault is a much more real threat because it happens so much.
And just from the woman perspective, I think I'd rather die than to live with that. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but
yeah,
like
it
you have
is.
to live with that
It is a
emotional
tough
torment
trauma.
for a really
How
long time.
many women do you know who've been sexually assaulted?
Oh my God, so many.
Against how many people you know who've been murdered? You know what I'm saying? Like, one's just way more
much
common.
higher.
And I don't know a lot of people who've been murdered.
I know
a ton of
He knows
people
a
who've
few,
been sexually
but like,
assaulted.
let's not get into semantics,
Yeah.
Josh.
I
Semantics.
think I know two who have, and I've known one who have been murdered. So.
But so we were talking about how as men we get threats of like physical violence or whatever, but we don't get threats of sexual violence. And
Right.
if we were women doing the exact same work, like the rape threats would be coming fast and furious. And
Scary.
a woman said, "Hey guys, if you want me to rape you, just ask." And this was on Twitter. And I kind of ignored it, and he kind of ignored it. And then another
kind of a joke,
I believe,
but a really,
yeah.
really bad joke.
And so there was a man who interjected. He's like, are we going to address the fact that this woman just made a rape threat against you? And
Oh, it was a woman. Okay.
yeah, it was a woman who made the rape threat against us.
Interesting.
And both Hugo and I kind of, I said, look, as a man in this society, I know that was a joke. I know it was a joke in poor taste, but I don't feel unsafe
Right.
for her
Yeah.
making that joke. And then we got on the topic of like rape jokes and is it ever appropriate? And something that Hugo said that I kind of take with me is that rape jokes are appropriate if they're making fun of rape culture, if they're
Right.
like dismantling rape culture,
Yeah.
but obviously not funny or appropriate when they're enforcing it
Or
And
encouraging it.
Yeah.
Right.
So again, I think
I
that
don't think many comedians actually I'm not talking about the internet. I'm talking about like comedians will actually do jokes about rape that are encouraging it. I think most of the time.
surprising number will.
Yeah. I like Tosh, and I think he does rape jokes, and they are dark.
But he also explains that this is not
and
acceptable.
He's problematic.
I actually got to see Jim Jeffries actually live here, and he has a set on rape, and he always starts it out by saying, "I, first of all, do not condone rape. Just want to make that clear. It is a terrible thing, and then he goes into the jokes. I think that's
then he goes into
the rape jokes because it's hard to laugh at trauma, but actually the funniest things are traumatic. Somebody falls down and slips and hits their head. Oh, we laugh. That's what AFV is all about.
In my experience, the best rape jokes are told by rape survivors.
Yeah.
Really?
And I'm not going to tell anyone who has survived rape that they can't interpret their own experience the way they want to.
Right.
But again, also, it's that thing of punching up versus punching down. Like, I feel like if you're in power, if you're white, if you're cisgender, if you're heterosexual, you can take more and feel safe than someone who is marginalized.
Yeah.
And I say that, and when I talk about
No,
things
I agree
like
with you 100%.
privilege, people always jump to race because I'm black, but I'm also heterosexual, cisgender, and male. So I have, I hit 3 of the 4 on the lottery. So I know about privilege. You can't tell me it's not a thing because I have a lot of it. I just don't have white privilege.
Yeah.
I think that's how people, I think developing an awareness of your privilege is a way of being a better person, because when you have this awareness, then you can be a little bit more careful and cautious about certain things. Whereas people who are like, oh no, that's not the case.
Right.
And they like kind of, I guess, downplay it. I feel like that's a little bit more dangerous of an area. Like the people that I know that really do try to like take ownership for the fact that they have that position tend to make better decisions.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
And they can be more compassionate if they
Yeah.
understand how much of a better position they're in.
Yeah, actually, I have an interesting story on this if you guys are open to
Sure.
it. So I
We like
had
stories.
I had a couple. I've had many couples where there were lawyers involved. I'm going to make this very broad because I'm not allowed to talk about anybody in particular.
Sure, of
But
course.
like I remember that there were some power dynamics going on because he had access to the legal system that she doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
And what's interesting is I always encourage my lawyers to kind of take the lawyer hat off and to acknowledge that that is a place of power. And when they are able to do that, God, you would not believe how like empowering that is for their female partners, because
Right.
they'll say to me, thank you, because it feels like he kind of uses that stuff against me.
Yeah.
But when he is aware of it, takes ownership and like consciously puts it behind him to just talk to his wife, I mean, God, you don't
yeah.
even know how different that is in the room.
Yeah, same thing with if you're married to a therapist.
Oh, yes.
She is
I
not
have
allowed.
power as well.
I say you're not allowed to therape me because that's what I call it. It's
Well,
therapy.
it feels that way
her
because it's a
her
violation.
website is actually Therapist in St. Louis. It can also be read as The Rapist in St. Louis, and she did.
I've had somebody call me in the middle of the night saying the rapist. St. Louis.
It was a drunk dial.
It was a drunk dial, but I get all
Great
kinds
message,
of weird
right?
calls.
Yeah.
well, first, I mean, just as an aside, shout out for taking that URL away from the person who would actually want to be known as the rapist in St. Louis.com.
I don't know many people
I
that
don't know who
want
wants
that.
to be known as that, but maybe.
You never know.
It's just the biggest search term. That's why I chose the URL. It's find a therapist in St. Louis. therapists in St. Louis. That's it. Yeah.
All right, well, do you have another question? Why don't you go?
Oh,
baby?
I got a million
I
questions.
know we about a bunch out.
So you say you're an expert on BDSM. What does that mean? Like,
how does one become an expert?
Did I say I was an expert?
Well,
on
I ask any
BDSM?
topics that you're considered an expert in,
Okay.
or have a lot of experience or passion that you want.
Okay.
I don't know if you can get expert status, but maybe you
let's
can.
just be clear. Like, I don't claim to be an expert.
No,
in
that was my
BDSM.
question, but it's a topic that
I
you
do have a lot of
enjoy talking
experience.
about. Yeah.
I've been in the BDSM community for more than 20 years, pretty much my entire adult life. And so I have a lot of experience, mostly as a bottom or a submissive. But so how does one become an expert? I guess for me, it's just, hours logged in.
Yeah. It sounds like you logged plenty. 20 years.
Time served.
Yeah.
And I knew I was into BDSM for longer than that, just, legally.
Yeah.
I could engage. Like, the
Yeah.
first dominatrix I ever saw literally carded me and was like, yeah, kid, come back when you're 21.
Oh, wow.
And I did.
Yeah. Interesting.
Thank you for the invite.
So you say the BDSM community. What is the community made up of? Like, I'm not sure.
Well, I mean,
I don't know
when I say BDSM community, I mean, it's like any other community. It's a group of people who have gathered together around, common cause. And for the community, they get together for things called munches, which is sort of like in a vanilla public space where they can just get to know who the BDSM community is.
Yeah.
Not necessarily at
Getting whipped on day one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
remember,
also,
there has to be consent exchanged at some point.
and also,
Yeah.
so the BDSM community can know them in
Yeah.
like a neutral space before you get invited to the private dungeon parties,
Right.
or the public
Oh.
dungeon parties, and then you go
Public
to the dungeon parties.
Yeah, they do it-
semi-public,
Semi-public,
versus
yeah.
private,
Yeah.
and so
You
There's
still
some
can
sort of
boot.
naughty gras that does a public one, but I heard they took out the dungeon this year because there was some pictures taken that were non-consensual
not
by the
good.
media.
that's not good.
Well, that's the thing. If you're at a public event, you may get your photo taken, and everybody has a smartphone.
Yeah, but don't you have to
but
sign off
but
for
it's
your
against,
image?
It's against the rules.
Oh, if it's against
Oh,
their
they
rules,
already
then
say it
that-
up front that it's
Yeah.
against the
But
rules.
people are always gonna buck the system. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Conventionally at any type of BDSM event, cell phones are not allowed.
That's good.
Or they'll give you like tape to cover the lens of your cell phone camera.
Right.
Cameras are not allowed unless it's specifically. Usually they'll have like a wristband you can wear if you're okay about having your picture taken.
I see.
They'll have
okay.
like one or two approved photographers, and then if they are editing their photos and they see someone without a wristband, they'll edit them out or what have you.
That's good.
That's interesting.
interesting.
Well, that's a great way to protect people too, because I mean, you got to understand nudity. Some people at an event like this want to be open, but like they don't want to lose their job
Right,
or
right.
get in trouble.
So you mentioned dungeon party.
Yes.
Tell us what happens at a dungeon party,
Well,
private or public.
Well, I mean, typically you'll have like a period of just, socialization, people
Yeah.
hanging out, talking, what have you. A lot of times they'll have like an educational event before the party starts proper because, you can't take, flogging at Washington University yet. And
Just an idea thrown out there.
you can read books about this stuff, but actually, I was part of an Impact Play demo at Washington University, but that's another story.
Oh, okay.
You can read books
Impact
about
Play.
this stuff, but reading a book about a physical activity, you're never going to really learn it.
Right.
So part of the way that these things are passed on is through like one-on-one education or peer education.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you'll have like a flogging demo or a caning demo or some type of little mini BDSM workshop, and you'll have like socialization, and then you'll have a spanking bench and a St. Andrew's cross and
Oh, wow.
different little stations or hard
St.
points
Andrew's
for
What's St. Andrew's Cross?
St. Andrew's cross. It's like a vertical X.
Uh-huh.
And
okay.
the tops of the X you attach your wrist
got
to,
it,
and the
yeah.
bottoms you attach your ankles to, and then you're restrained and beaten.
Wow. Consensually.
Consensually, because they
Yeah,
like it. That's
always
the point.
consensual.
And do you guys
Yeah.
use safe words as a part of that?
Yes, usually it's heavily encouraged, if not required, to use a safe word. Especially when you're playing in public, because there's if you're like an edge player, like if you're really into some hardcore stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know yourself, you know your partner knows you. You can do things in private that might be disturbing in a public place where you know the people throwing the party or the owners of the space have some type of liability. So typically when you play in public, it's required that you use a safe word. They have people called dungeon monitors who might check in with you if they think something you're doing
Make sure
is
nobody's passed
not
out and
safe,
bleeding on the floor.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Could you tell us some wild stories from your travels? What's a unique story?
Wild stories from my travels.
Yeah.
Because you travel a lot. Yeah.
I travel
some?
a decent amount.
Yeah.
I was teaching. I tell the story in my Poly 101 class. I was teaching Polyamory 101 in Providence, Rhode Island, and a gentleman asked, "What's your advice for someone who's new to polyamory and is dating someone who's been polyamorous for quite some time?" And I said, well, I would say, take it very slow, err on the side of caution. You can always renegotiate the things you've consented to, basically check in with yourself and take care of yourself. So later that day, I had a date with a friend of mine, and she gets me, naked, tied up. She's beating me. She's like straddling me on the bed in my hotel room. She's, beating me up, and she says, "Yeah, it would be really nice to have sex with you right now, but someone told my boyfriend to err on the side of caution and to take it slow and that consent can be renegotiated." And
I wonder who that was.
You didn't know.
And she's like punching me, and like in between punches, she's like, tell my boyfriend that I can play with other penises. And I'm tied up and rolling with the punches.
Safe
and
word.
I'm saying to her, like, that would compromise my professional integrity.
That's great.
So again, enlightened self-interest. You can trust that even under duress, even under torture, even when I'm bound and getting beaten, I will not compromise my professional integrity.
No matter how much she hits you.
I'm doing it for you. It's all about the community.
I'm
Yeah.
proud. That was a great
That's awesome.
story. And it's kind of sexy too. You're like, oh, that's fun. It's part of the play. But no, it's true. You shouldn't change your like moral compass just because you're having sex with somebody.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. That's
That's funny, but she can totally torture you with it, and that's fun too.
And she did, and no regrets.
no regrets. So you said you've seen Andy Garcia naked. How did that happen?
Yeah, we want to know about him.
He was not naked. He was in his underwear.
Okay.
In a previous life, I was a aspiring filmmaker and entertainment journalist, and I talked my way onto the set of an Andy Garcia movie to get an interview with the director, and I was the loser in LA without a car. So I had to take a bus to the set, and like taking a bus in LA is really not the way to get around.
Yeah.
And so it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I think we're in Silver Lake, and I didn't have a ride back to my hotel.
Yeah.
And so I asked one of the I think it was the associate producer, like, hey, can someone give me a ride? And he says, oh yeah, I'll give you a ride back to your hotel, no problem, just wait in that trailer for me. I was like, okay, sure. He didn't tell me it was Andy Garcia's trailer.
Oh, wow.
So I'm sitting in this trailer waiting for my ride. Andy Garcia like walks right past me, starts taking all of his clothes off.
Did he see you?
And he gets I think it took him a while to notice someone was in there, because he had like a long day of shooting. And at one point he's standing there just in his like tidy whities, and he looks at me and he goes, David? And I go, yeah. And he goes, would you excuse me? And I'm like, yes, Mr. Garcia. And I like fly out of there.
Oh, yes.
Because it was kind of like, I'm sitting there like, is Andy Garcia taking his clothes off in front of me? And I don't know what to do. Do I just leave? Do I say something?
Would it be rude for you to just up and leave? Because it's like, why? Did he not like my body?
It's like
Come
maybe he's
on.
putting on a show. You never know.
And now at 44 years old, I would have just left. But I was like in my early 20s. I was
Maybe a deer in headlights in that moment.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, I'm done with my questions. Do you have any others, babe?
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, you said you coach people on kink as a part of your relationship. How do you coach somebody on kink? Like, what does that generally involve?
Well, I mean, I don't coach, like, I have friends in the kink community who like coach on like the nuts and bolts, like how to flog someone,
how to flog
how
somebody,
to tie someone, rope bondage. I do it more from a theory perspective. So I have my a workshop I teach called Macho Submission, which is because a lot of classes that you'll see at this is getting better over the last 20 years, but you know, a lot of classes that you see at BDSM conventions are from the perspective of the top. It's like how to do this, how to do that, how to tie someone up.
I hear a lot of people want a good top.
So can you clarify real quick for our audience? What's the top? What's the bottom?
So the top is the person doing the thing, and typically, and the bottom is the person who is being acted upon.
Okay, they're receiving.
And often, but not always, you know, the top is the dominant and the bottom is the submissive. And so a lot of education was from the perspective of the top or the dominant, because a lot of this stuff is dangerous. You know, some of it is
you gotta be
like
safe.
literally playing with fire, literally playing with knives.
Actual fire.
So, yes,
Some?
actual
Yeah,
fire.
No, don't do that.
Fire play.
Actual
Fire
knives.
bad.
Yes.
No.
And so it's important to learn this stuff so that you don't kill anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So message from David Wraith. Everybody, don't kill anybody.
I think that's a good lesson.
So it was very weighted toward the top. As a submissive, I try to do some counter programming and teach BDSM from the perspective of the submissive or the bottom. So I have my macho submission class, and then privately I coach people. Oftentimes it's just something as simple as how to get involved. Like if you're new to the kink community, how do you navigate it? You know, how do you stay safe? How do you find a good top? How do you, you know, integrate yourself into a new BDSM community? I
have a question on this because I have a lot of clients who come to me as bottoms but are struggling with the consent piece. So a big part of this is that like you have these conversations with a bottom and they're supposed to clarify what they're okay with, what they're not okay with, set some boundaries. But what I found with some of my bottoms in sessions is that they struggle to use a safe word. They struggle to say no to things because they want to please the top. Yeah. But then they almost push themselves past their own boundaries and too
make
far.
some regret.
Yeah, and so a lot of I wonder what kind of coaching have you ever seen that, and what kind of coaching you do to help bottoms with that?
I've never that I can recall coach someone with that specifically, although it's probably come up in macho submission. And I think part of it is finding a good top. It's like, you know, making a movie, half the work is the casting. Yeah. Because good tops can read their bottoms.
They're trying to. Yeah.
Because it's this very strange dance that we do. You don't want a safe word. You don't want the scene to end. You don't want the fun to stop.
You want to get lost in it. It's fun.
You don't want to
There's like a subspace, I hear.
Your top. But sometimes you need a safe word to take care of yourself. Right. And a lot of times a good top will read that, and without you having
maybe just by how you're reacting to it,
they will sort of back off, because you want the scene to last. Like if you really want to just break someone, you can make someone safe word in 30 seconds. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But
that's not what's fun. It's exciting to get lost in it.
Yeah, you want to push up to that edge and back off and go back towards it and make that last as long as possible. But from the perspective of the bottom, I think it's really important to know your own limits and know your own boundaries, and know that they can shift and change, and not tie your self-esteem or your identity as a bottom necessarily to how much you can take all the time, because there's so many moving parts. There's so many variables. You know, how much sleep you've had, how much food you've had, you know, how much you've had to drink, where you are emotionally. You know, you can get the sleeves beaten off you for hours one day, and then 2 weeks later it's like you're butter and you can't take it
don't
for
spank me
15
at all.
minutes. Yeah. And that's okay. And not competing with other bottoms, which is something that I've done. Like,
how do you compete with another bottom?
Well, it's like if I have
like hit me, don't hit him.
If
I can do better than you.
If I have a top that's a heavy player, and I've seen them play.
What does that mean, heavy player?
Heavy player, someone who's really intense, like really likes to
they
beat
get
people
into
pretty
it
hard.
Yeah.
And I've seen them play with bottoms who are heavy players. And it's like, well, oh, I can take more than he can take, or I can get longer.
A little competitive.
It's almost like competition. I got it.
It's like, okay, I don't know that person's life. I don't know where they are physically. I don't know all the differences between them and me. Yeah. And also, when you're tied up and getting beaten, you're not the best, you know, arbitrator of how much you're taking versus someone else. You lose track of time. You lose track of. I got beaten for 7 hours once.
What?
And I didn't realize
a long time.
I got in my car and looked at the clock, and I was like, "That's impossible."
7 hours.
Yeah.
Like, that was a really intense scene.
I had no idea that 7 hours had passed.
Didn't you get hungry and need to like go have
Well,
a
yeah,
bite?
the bathroom or something?
Take a little break?
I was on my way to get food when I realized what time it was.
Oh, that's okay. That's when you got hungry after
And-
7 hours.
I just get beat for 7 hours and then I gotta go eat.
I'm at the restaurant and I'm using the bathroom at the restaurant and I'm trying to like lower my pants so I can take a piss and my pants are sticking to my legs.
Oh.
And that's when I realized I'd been bleeding.
Oh no.
And again, like I'd felt like warm liquid like trickling down my leg when I was getting beaten.
Yeah.
But I was so in subspace that I couldn't even process what
Right.
that meant.
Right.
So
Because when you're having the BDSM happening, it actually releases endorphins. It puts you in kind of a high.
They
level.
call it the subspace. You go into another
Subspace.
world almost.
and that's why you're not objective
Right.
in those moments, which is why you shouldn't try to compete with other bottoms, because you
Yeah.
often you're not really conscious of exactly what's happening to you. It's why it's good to have a good top.
Yeah, someone that
can-
knows
who
you
can
and knows
read
your
you.
limits.
Well,
yeah.
one thing I want to reiterate that you said earlier, because this is actually for vanillas too, is that the context can change. I see a lot of my vanilla couples really struggling to like talk about boundaries in this way, where it's like, you know what, I'm comfortable with us doing maybe anal this time, but I'm not comfortable the next time. It just didn't, I wasn't up for it. I'm not interested. Or like, even if it's sex toys, I feel like they need to there's this belief that they have that like, once I've done something, I can never
Exactly.
take it off the
Exactly.
table.
Yeah.
And that's just not true. Sex is about where you're at in that moment and what that means to you, so that like if you want to do certain things in this situation, you can, but you can also say no to the things in this situation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I meant when I was telling the gentleman in that story, you know, consent can be renegotiated at any time.
Absolutely.
Because we don't have, whether it's sex or BDSM or polyamory or swinging or whatever, these things don't exist in a vacuum. Like they're
Yeah.
part of the rest of our lives. You know, you're gonna lose jobs and get new jobs, and people you love are going to get sick, and people you love are going to die.
Yeah.
And there's all these, you know, stresses in life that, whether we're really conscious of it or not, are going to impact how we feel physically and mentally and emotionally and sexually, and things are going to change. And that doesn't mean that they'll necessarily change permanently.
Yeah.
But they can change temporarily, and just because you consented to something when things were great and everything was moving smoothly, doesn't mean you're obligated to continue to do that when other life factors change how you feel or how you react.
I think that's the most important lesson. Go on, Josh.
So speaking of other life factors, I was on your Facebook page and I saw that you were recently a widower.
Yes.
So how long ago was that?
My wife died 7 months ago.
Okay.
that's
And
hard.
how has that affected your sex life, your work life at all? I'm wondering how people function after such
After
a big
losing something
life
so
change
important.
like that.
It's difficult. And so when you're a sex educator, when you're like a traveling sex educator, you have this strange nebulous relationship with a large number of people. And there are certain events that I hit every year.
Yeah.
And so it's this weird thing where I'm looking at a crowd of people. I don't know how many of these people know me. I don't know how many of these people follow me on social media. I don't know how many of these people saw my name in a catalog and just said, oh, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was in Portland, Oregon, and a total stranger came up to me and said, you know, I'm really sorry about your wife.
Right.
And it kind of threw me for a loop because I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, this year I went back to teaching and on the road, and it's like, you know, every spot I hit, this is the first time I'm hitting it since my wife passed away.
Yeah.
And when I teach, like, especially my polyamory class, I talk a lot about my wife. And it was super emotional
Yeah.
to, you know, teaching the same material, but from this point of view of having just lost my partner of, you know, 5.5 years, who a lot of what I learned about polyamory, I learned from my wife.
Yeah.
And so it was rough. You
Yeah.
know, I had some tough moments, but also, you know, having total strangers who follow me on social media and feel like they know me and feel like they knew my wife, it was really comforting and really beautiful, you know.
Yeah. To see that love coming your way.
I mean, it was, you know, it's a blessing and a curse. I was teaching in Chicago, and it was the first time I was walking around the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I felt truly anonymous, because I was away from the dungeon space that had hired me to teach. I was away from St. Louis, and I was like, okay, like, I'm very confident that no one in this city knows I'm a widow. And
Yeah.
I can just be like
You just be
a
you.
regular
You're just there.
person.
You're just a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's been complicated.
Yeah.
And I don't have.
Because it's hard when somebody brings it up, then you have to
Yeah.
You have to think
about
about
it and
it
talk
and-
about
And
it.
I don't have a compass for it. Like, I've lost a few people. I've lost a few intimate partners.
Yeah.
But, you know, never someone that I had the relationship with that I had with my wife. So it's just
Right.
really uncharted territory. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been a while. At 44 years old, kind of felt like, yeah, I covered a lot of ground. You know, problems arise, but I've been through it before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is something like, oh, this is a really big problem
That's a
that
hard one.
I've never been through.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine losing my wife. So my
Yeah.
condolences to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One other topic that I wanted to bring up was the Black Lives Matter movement.
Mhm.
I see you post about that on Facebook. I follow you on there.
Mhm.
1 second. Let me pop this
Also,
up.
Josh is making sure we're good there.
We're good. We can record whenever.
Okay.
We're under an hour.
Okay,
So
good.
in the civil rights movement in the 1960s, they fought for equal rights in voting, school integration, and so many other goals, and they achieved a lot of those goals.
Mhm.
And right now, the Black Lives Matter movement's more about equal treatment in the policing and
Mhm.
criminal justice system at
Mhm.
large. What do you see as the goal of the Black Lives Matter movement? I know the goal is equal rights when it comes to those things, but what would you change systematically to ensure equal treatment when it comes to policing and the prison system?
That was a pretty tall order to give him.
So save the world. Go.
No.
I'll tell you the first thing I would change
Yeah.
is when someone dies in police custody,
Mm-hmm.
it triggers an independent investigation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There was I've ingested so many facts about this over the years that I might transpose some, but I believe it was in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
A young white man was executed at point blank range by a police officer. The police officer pointed the gun at his head, pulled the trigger, and the gun misfired, and he pulled the gun a second time and killed him. And the young man's father won like a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the state and used all of that money, and I think the next 10 years of his life, getting a law passed that when someone dies in police custody, it triggers an independent investigation in that state, because he did the research, and it had been I think 120 years since a police officer had been indicted
Oh,
for
wow.
It
shooting
doesn't
someone.
happen.
So for, over a century, it was, and again, I could be like transposing some numbers
No,
here,
it's okay.
but for, decades upon decades, it was by default legal for the police to kill you under just about any
and
circumstance.
it still feels like that. Like I saw a video. It was tragic to watch of a police raid, and it was one of those probably like just I think they have drugs. That's why they're coming in, and they kick the door down, and the guy goes like this. It's a young black man. He puts his hands up like this and pulls back, and the police officer shoots him.
Right.
This is the only. So if if you're listening to the podcast, I'm putting my hands up in front of my face saying,
It's
please
the only way to
don't
say
shoot.
peace.
It's like, I am
Like,
surrendering.
nothing's in my
I don't
hands.
mean any harm. And they just shot him. It was really hard to watch. And that police officer didn't go to prison.
No.
He didn't get punished. I think he may have resigned. But if I had gone in there and shot that man, I would have been indicted. I would have been convicted of murder, because that was murder. And I don't understand how there's a double standard. And I understand policing, it's a tough job. We actually have a family member who's trying to go into the police academy. And there are very good police officers out there. But when something like that happens, it just feels like they said, oh, it was a threatening gesture to put your
like-
hands up.
It's an
Like,
atrocity. That's what it is.
It's terrible. And I don't, like I was saying, like, how do you change that? It's like independent. I think that's a good step, is independent. But I think legalizing all vices is a big one too. Because I think a lot of times things were like cannabis, marijuana, it was illegalized because they didn't like the jazz clubs and the
Right.
Mexicans
Right.
who were using it. And they were like, we want a reason to arrest them and
Yeah.
mess with them.
I mean, drug prohibition is basically a means of controlling people of color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lawyer, I forget his name, I wish I could cite the quote, but he says that, every year he tells his first year law students, I think, the first week of class,
Mm-hmm.
do not support a law that you would not be able to, that you would not justify killing to enforce.
Right.
And
Oh,
he
wow.
says that all of his students kind of give him pushback on that. And he says, well, okay, who enforces the law? the police. The
Right.
police have guns. The police will kill you.
They would kill you for
For
cannabis.
having drugs.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I mean, for anything. I mean,
I mean,
really,
yeah.
when you think about it, I mean,
You could be just walking down the street.
Yeah, for jaywalking, for failing to signal a lane change, for
Yeah.
speeding.
People get pulled over for slight
they're not
infractions.
necessarily killing you for that reason,
Mhm.
but that begins the interaction that could lead to your death in
Right.
a matter of minutes.
You know, the
Right.
truth is, I think that the only legal laws that should be there should be for protecting us from each other, because like from harming others,
That's
but
why-
not like from.
harming our own selves.
I mean,
Yeah.
like if
What
you
they
want
call
to do drugs,
consensual crimes. Yeah.
Right.
yeah, like
Right.
yeah. I mean, you can harm yourself. Not that I want people to die, because obviously I'm also a mental health worker, so I'm encouraging people not to kill themselves.
Yeah,
I'm
don't
in a
kill-
job where
so-
I'm trying to help people.
So everybody knows, Angela says, "Don't kill yourself."
That's the take-home message. But the point is that, like, the laws are supposed to protect us from hurting each other, not protect us from doing a vice. I
Right.
feel like that's when it gets into like behavior
and
control.
and people say this all the time when we talk about legalization of drugs, of any drugs. They say, "Oh, that'll mean more people will do them. It'll make it more dangerous." But I think it was Portugal legalized all drugs, and they made it so that 100% any drug, cannabis, heroin, cocaine, anything. And what they found is that the numbers dropped because they took all the money. The scientists who studied it and told them to do it, they said, take all the money that you were spending on drug enforcement and spend it on rehabilitation
yeah, treatment.
and treatment. And the way they do that is getting those people back into society, because a lot of times they're depressed, isolated. They feel like they're isolated from society in some way.
yeah.
And that is the actual way of doing it. And it does the opposite effect. Everybody thinks, oh, drugs are illegal. I'm sorry. If you want to go do heroin, you can do it now.
Yeah.
Like, people think all of a sudden it's legal, you're going to do it. No, if somebody's doing heroin, they're doing it now.
Yeah, and this just makes it safer. you know?
Same thing with something like prostitution. Like, if somebody's going to do it, they're going to do it. Legalizing it's
Yeah.
not going to change that.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think what's stopping someone from doing heroin is the law.
No.
You know, if you have the desire to do it, you're going to do it. And if
Yeah.
you're the type of person who doing heroin is anathema to you, it's not like, oh, it's legal now. I'm
Oh.
gonna go
Oh,
shoot
what
up.
a great day.
Yeah, and they I actually find in some countries they have like clean injection sites for heroin users. I think it's in somewhere in Norwegian, northwestern Europe, where they said, okay, heroin users, you can come here, you get medical grade heroin, you can come here, get a regular dose, it's controlled dose. They know those
Yeah,
syringes
they can
are
protect
clean.
them from
Clean
overdose
needles,
or
yeah.
hurting themselves
Yeah.
or sharing needles and getting HIV.
And on top of it, there's psychiatrists there, so they can actually help them with other things. And those people end up committing less crimes. They end up having better jobs and better lives. And yeah,
yeah.
So we got a little off topic. We're
Well,
talking about
I
drugs.
think it's good time
but-
to wrap up too. I think we've covered a lot.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we have.
So, David, we just wanted to thank you for being here. Is there
Yeah.
anything you wanted to plug before we end the show? Because you can plug whatever you want.
Well, if you want to keep up with me, you can go to davidwraith.com, DavidWraith. If you want to catch up with Sex Positive St. Louis, it's sexstl.com, and both websites will have links to my website has links to all my social media,
Yep.
and Sex Positive St. Louis, sexstl.com has links to all of our social media. And basically, if you Google Sex Positive St. Louis, you'll find us. And I'm David Wraith or Planet Wraith on pretty much all social media
Yeah.
platforms.
Yeah, we're going to
Okay.
put those links in the description for the podcast. So if anybody wants to check them out, they'll be there.
And then, of course, if you need therapy, www.therapistintlouis.com to connect with me.
Yeah, and I'm Josh. Hi.
Thank you for joining us,
Thanks
everyone.
for joining us, and have a good night, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for being here.
Oh,
It was really awesome to
That
meet
was
you.
cool, yeah. Oh, he's trying to shake.
Shake your hand.
Hey,
Shake.
what time is it? Because I have that thing afterwards. I was kind of
Oh.
checking in. That's why I was bugging
It's
you.
10:45.
Oh, we're fine.
Yeah, they
I
got
was
here
so
a little
worried.
early. No, we're under an hour, and we're
Oh.
still live streaming that.
Oh, it's fine. No,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us.
Anybody that actually
everyone.
watches the video, thank you for
Yeah,
coming.
yeah, it was
We
great.
actually have had a lot of viewers on there. I guess
Yeah.
people like video.
People
Who
like
knew?
videos,
Yeah.
so we'll send you the live stream relatively soon, like today, but then
Yeah.
we'll send you the
And then-
podcast later when
Yep.
it comes out.
awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Have a
everybody.
good night.